Salutations, people of the internet. Welcome to the database. Last year I hosted the Road to Sonic Origins, where I talked about 4 mainline Sonic games of the Genesis era, leading up to reviewing the actual compilation of the same name. Granted, seeing as there's going to be a physical release of the game with added content, expect an update video for that in the future. For now, I want to do another marathon, this time with the pink puffball himself, Kirby. Last time I talked about Kirby was on 2 occasions, where I talked about the first game Kirby starred in, as well as the most recent mainline Kirby game as of this video, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. That was during my early years of doing the Database Network series, where I was still finding my footing when it comes to making videos, but both still do hold sentimental value to me, so I recommend checking those 2 out before continuing onward. This year, I'll be calling this marathon the Summer of Kirby, where all summer long, I'll be discussing Kirby content from May until August. I don't really have a set schedule for these sets of videos, so I'll be covering as much as I can. Of course, if I want to do these kind of marathon reviews, we'll be looking at these Kirby games in game release order, or at least the order that makes sense. We'll start this marathon off with the Dreamland sequel, Kirby's Dreamland 2, on the Game Boy. Before I begin, I want to apologize for not uploading any new videos since March of this year. However, I want to thank you guys for over 300 plus subscribers on this channel. If this channel reaches over 500 subscribers, I might do something special, who knows. Following the success of Kirby's first game on the Game Boy, in came the sequel in 1995. The story is considered the first part of what is known in the Kirby franchise as the Dark Matter Trilogy, named after the main antagonists of this and the next 2 Kirby games, Dreamland 3 and Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. The latter I probably won't cover yet in this marathon due to the lack of legal way to gather footage. All you need to know about this trilogy is that these 3 games are directed by Shinichi Shimomura, not Masahiro Sakurai. Instead, while the Dark Matter trilogy continues on, Sakurai would go on to make Kirby's Adventure on the NES and the popular Kirby Superstar on the Super Nintendo. That game introduced me to the Kirby series, and by playing the Dark Matter trilogy alongside Superstar, you can clearly tell the differences in terms of basic mechanics. The story for Kirby's Dreamland 2 follows our pink hero, and yes, they finally decided on his color to be pink at this time around, as he collects the 7 rainbow drops of the Rainbow Bridge across the 7 Rainbow Islands, in order to defeat the evil Dark Matter, who's in possession of the former villain, King Dedede, from taking over Dreamland. It's a simple premise for sure, but it does get the job done of establishing the main villain of the game and the villain's motives. Joining Kirby in this adventure are 3 new animal companions. There's Rick the hamster, Coo the owl, and Kind the fish. There's also this gooey creature that appears in the game, but they don't really do much other than give Kirby an extra hit point or extra life. Each of these companions have their own strengths and weaknesses, and if Kirby has a copy ability on standby, they can also utilize copy abilities in different ways, given different combinations of attacks along the way. Many of these abilities and combinations come in handy when it comes to collecting the Rainbow Bridge pieces. Now that the story portion is out of the way, let's get into the gameplay. While not the first game to do so, on a portable handheld, this is the first Kirby game to utilize the famous copy ability Kirby is known for. There is only 7 here: Burning, Cutter, Ice, Stone, Needle, Parasol, and Spark. The smallest amount of copy abilities in a Kirby game I looked so far, but the small amount makes up for it with the different combinations of Kirby's animal friends. So in actuality, there are 28 different combinations you can mix with between Kirby's abilities and the animal companions. The first animal you come across in this game is Rick the hamster. His unique strength comes with handling dangerous terrain such as getting on cross ice, meaning he is perfect for on-ground travel. Coo the owl comes next, and he replaces Kirby in terms of his flying, floating ability. though many of his copy abilities are weak within water. Speaking of water, that's where Kinda Fish comes in. He's perfect for underwater travel, and you can tap the A button to make him swim quicker. So the obvious setback for him is that he is vulnerable on land, and he can only hop across terrain. You can find all of these animal friends by rescuing them after beating a mid-level boss, though for some stages they are randomized. While the game was released on the Game Boy, it did take advantage of the color palette. I think the best way to experience Kirby's Dreamland 2 was using the Super Game Boy attachment on the Super Nintendo. With that attachment, it gives the game the most accurate color palette for its characters and stages. Even though I have my own Super Game Boy, I don't have a copy of the game, so the best option I had to record footage was within the Game Boy emulator on the Switch's online service. And while the color palette is not exactly one-to-one with the Super Game Boy attachment, it instead uses the color palette seen if you attach the game to the Game Boy Color, though it kinda looks like vomit if you ask me. The game is very similar to the first Dreamland game prior, only this time with the use of copy abilities and more stages. So there are 7 stages in total. I won't go into detail into each one of them. They're basically there to change the aesthetic of the stage. Some of these stages can consist up to 3 to 7 levels. There are at least 1 rainbow drop per stage within one of these levels. Collecting all of them will grant you the true final fight against the main villain himself, Dark Matter, where Kirby uses a rainbow sword from all the drops he's collected to defeat him. Fun fact, this game also starts the trend of poor Dedede being possessed by the main villain of the game. As Kirby defeats Dark Matter, Kirby uses a rainbow sword to create a rainbow in the sky across Popstar. And with that was Kirby's Dreamland 2, a little challenging than the first game, but not too difficult to complete. It is a bit longer than the first Dreamland game, but not close enough to being a very long adventure. Plus, this shorter video review allows me to get back in the swing of things after a 2-month hiatus. The addition of Kirby's animal friends are great, especially when trying to mix and match them with copy abilities. My favorite animal companion in this game is Coo the Owl, especially when he's paired with the cutter ability, as this gives him a long distance range on both sides. I should note that if you go underwater as Rick or Coo, their use of copy abilities are weakened to shorter attacks. There is a lot of variety when it comes to Kirby's combat. However, in terms of its worlds and stage designs, they're not so as memorable as future titles in the series. Mostly because most of your adventure would comprise of either a series of platforming challenges or a mid-level boss, and finding the 7 rainbow drops. My final grade for Kirby's Dreamland 2 is a B-, a fine follow-up to the original Dreamland game, but not as remarkable as other Kirby titles were later improved upon. It's a great start to the Dark Matter trilogy that leaves a lot of room for potential when I look over the future Kirby titles. So what were your thoughts on Kirby's Dreamland 2? Was the game too short for you or liking? Let me know in the comments down below. Tune in the next 2 weeks from now during the Summer of Kirby as I take a brief detour on the Dark Matter trilogy to bring you a childhood favorite of mine, Kirby Superstar, on the Super Nintendo. Thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to the database and hit the bell icon, and follow me on social media as seen above. I'm Christopher James, and I'll see you next time.
What are friends? Friends are there to pick you up when you're feeling a little down. Friends are there to rearrange someone's face when they're acting like a clown. Friends are a hamster, a fish, and an owl. In Kirby...